Here.
Gonzalez,
Present.
Hernandez,
Present.
Hurst.
Here. Thank you very much. Attorney Smith, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. If I could ask for a moment of silence, please, for our brothers and sisters in Butte County. The town of Paradise has been destroyed. 42 people have died in that conflagration so far. 6,522 homes destroyed, 260 commercial structures, 125,000 acres of the deadliest fire in California's modern history. 50,000 people evacuated, required to evacuate out of that. And, you know, the Red Cross would be glad to accept donations to assist that. And so just thinking about how we have gone through disasters here, and I just wanted to have a moment of silence for those that have passed on in Butte County. Thank you very much. Translation service is available for anyone who desires it. You know the drill. Get the apparatus and listen in. You can see from anyone who doesn't have an agenda, there are agendas in the foyer. Please help yourself. We have a miscellaneous documents report that you can access online as well. We'll go to our item number 5, presentations and oral communications. First, we'll have oral communications from the public and then the City Council. So if you're here to address the council on items that are not on our agenda, this is the time to come to the microphone and speak. And welcome.
Good evening, and my name is Takashi Mizuno, and I live 649 Bronte Avenue, Watsonville. And I'm here tonight to bring up our concern about the use of pesticide Roundup by the city. And we had annual meeting of Bay Bridge Homeowners Association on November 3rd. And we had a presentation by a city staff about city's project of planting native plants in the Bay Street. And we really appreciate that project. But in the end of his presentation, we asked him how to control the weeds. And he said that the city is using Roundup. And we were very much concerned about it. And so we opposed, and in that meeting, I told the participants that I'm bringing up this issue in the city council meeting tonight. And I'm an active member of a coalition group, Safe Agriculture, Safe Schools. It's a part of California statewide coalition of pesticide reform. And we are a very active organization. And anyway, I had a chance to talk with one of the staff of the city this afternoon about the use of Roundup, and I'm pleased to hear that the city is moving toward not to use Roundup, and that's good news. Anyway, I made a copy for each of you, this copy of the newspaper article in The Guardian. This last August, this person, he worked in the school district in San Francisco, and he's dying from the cancer. And he sued Monsanto, and the jury is gave the verdict that Monsanto need to pay $289 million to him. And there are about 8,000 other cases. And so, in the PBUSD, Palo Valley Unified School District, we are successful 2 years ago that school district has passed a resolution not to use Roundup in the school sites. So we think that it's time for the city, Watsonville City, not to use Roundup in the city facilities. And also, I made a copy of this non-toxic product as an alternative to Roundup. So I made a copy for each of you. Can I?
Yes, thank you. Just hand them to Erwin,
Okay, 7 copies.
and we'll take a look at that. Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address the council on items not on our agenda?
Yes, like my new friend Takashi, I'm also a member of Safe Agriculture, Safe Schools, Steve Trujillo. And again, I want to reiterate everything that he said is true. It is unfortunate the city has continued to use Roundup. It is a toxin. It is carcinogenic. 3 of my neighbors on Bronte Avenue, I only live a block away from him, have died from cancer in the last year, and my next door neighbor was just diagnosed. So, in addition to this, and being in touch with Ana Caballero and Bill Monning, I have a petition to State Senator Bill Monning, whereas the toxic carcinogenic sprays such as acromite and Roundup that use deadly chemicals in controlling pests and weeds are used with few, if any, controls when sprayed adjacent to senior communities in Santa Cruz County, place the lives of seniors in jeopardy. Therefore, we're asking the state of California, through its enforcement rights by each county agriculture commissioner, to ban the use of these chemicals within 5 miles of senior communities. This shall be called the Safe Air for Seniors Act of 2019. I now have 50 signatures from seniors throughout Santa Cruz County and counting. I'll be taking this tomorrow night to the Pajaro Village Homeowner Association to get their approval and more signatures. Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot tell you how important this is. We already have air quality that is literally thick enough to cut a knife through. Chemicals that are carcinogenic often attach themselves to particles of wood that fly through the air and make themselves even more at home in lungs and mucous membranes. We need to understand the time has come. We cannot be lab rats for Monsanto. We are not beholden to corporations. We are a city. We should hold our head up proud and be able to breathe the clean air of freedom and reject the idea that we have to use carcinogenic chemicals like Takashi just said. There are alternatives, and this is the direction we need to move. Now, my 2 opponents aren't here tonight, unfortunately. I wish they were. And whether I won the election or not, I will be working on this issue for many, many months to come, and you can expect to see me in the future regularly. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. Anyone else wish to address the council on items not on our agenda? Welcome, sir.
Thank you. My name is Dan Hernandez. I reside at 319 2nd Street. I've been at this address for 50 years. And by the way, I'll be signing your signature. I'm here to give thanks to all who've actually voted this year, mainly because it finally shows that when the collective gets together, we can stand behind a man like Greg Kaplan. And that's why we can also stand behind a man. Any future indentures you have, Felipe, I'm your man. Because here's the deal. This was the time to stand up or shut up. And I've seen that some of you stood up and some of you just shut up. Not even here tonight. Wow, that shows a lot of character, doesn't it? But I'm here on a positive note. Number 1, it's time we start to heal old wounds. And if you don't know, well, let me just say this. I had to do with a lot of you not winning, just by not even being there or just by contacting the same people you know. You now have the right dynamics up here. You right now have everything you need, except for one thing. He has to go. And I'm talking about Alan D. Smith. And if you don't know what that stands for, you can talk to me later. You have endeavored this city and lost so many lawsuits, like the fluoride. Yeah, time for you to go. So anyway, I want to thank Felipe for your service, because you know what? It takes a lot of guts to do what you're doing right now. So I'll be supporting you in whatever you do, because I now like the company you keep.
Anyone else wish to address the council on items not on our agenda? This is the time.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and members of the public. My name is Imelda Negrete. I'm the Recreation Superintendent for the Parks and Community Services Department. So the holidays are almost basically upon us, and I'm here to invite everyone to join us this holiday season at the Plaza for the Holiday in the Plaza. This year, differently, every weekend we're planning on having a variety of events for the family, so we hope that all of you guys can join us. We start off this on Saturday, December 1st, with a multicultural celebration, and of course, the holiday tree lighting. The following day, we're bringing back snow to Watsonville, so with giving back to Second Harvest Bank, you can definitely get your entry into the snow, as well as Santa will be joining us every weekend. The last, December 15th, the Saturday right before Christmas, we'll be doing a movie night at the Plaza, which would be the movie Santa Claus. So I hope everyone can join us.
Thank you very much, and it's exciting to see the tree already placed in the plaza, and we can't wait for the festivities to begin. Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to address us on items not on our agenda? Seeing no one approaching the podium, we will move to council's oral communications. Dr. Millicent, would you like to start out, please?
Well, I'll start with, we were in this room next door to listen to the PVUSD State of the District address, and it looks like we're making significant academic progress under our new superintendent's leadership, so we're happy to see that happening in our district. We know we've got great kids, and it's great to see them progressing. And then I had the opportunity to attend the PRW FPA flood control. There was a meeting, it was on a teleconference. And I just want you to realize that we continue to move forward towards flood control and improvement on the levee. We're never going to give this up. And it seems that we have the right people. You know, you have people from Santa Clara County, Monterey County, San Benito, Santa Cruz County, all working together to work on this Pajaro River. And I think it's going to happen. We have Congressman Panetta, who's been an advocate, and Senator Feinstein is involved now too, along with Greg Caput and Zach Friend. So we have people that are involved, and I really think that positive things will come about. I had the opportunity to attend Wine and Roses, as many people here did. I went to the Bay Village Homeowners Association meeting, and I want to commend Ben, who is the supervisor for Parks and Recreation. He did a presentation on Bridge Street and the improvements that are going to transpire. It looks good. People were happy. And, you know, not everybody's perfect there, but it's going to work. And people are looking for something rather than just that old grass that has weeds in it now. So that's a positive thing. I want to also, well, I attended the Veterans Day event with Council Member Aurelio Gonzalez, and where we honored Don Cooley and Fred Martinez. It's really nice to see the people that are there supporting. You know, people are dying off, and this is World War II. World War I, it was 100 years of the anniversary, and now we're into World War II, and when they ask people to stand up, there just aren't as many, as you know. But we heard a great speaker from Cabrillo College, and real positive things that were stated there. I also had attended the St. Francis open house, and I would like to congratulate all of the people who were recently elected into various offices. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Kaufman Gomez?
Thank you. I would also like to concur that we all need to keep in mind what we're doing with the fire situation that's going on here and how easy that can occur in anybody's neighborhood. And I know that the Red Cross are being very active in taking in some of the funding for anybody that's willing to donate and get the resources to those communities that have been devastated by this, as well as firefighters. I don't know if we currently have any of our own firefighters that are out there now, but we want to wish you a safe return as well. The other items I want to bring up is in the chambers here on Thursday at 6 o'clock this week, we'll have another discussion with the Regional Transportation Commission. And it will be the discussion about the different corridors that we have here for the transportation and the different options that are being studied. So again, I really encourage folks to show up and give us your feedback on this particular subject matter. I'm also sharing with the Register Pajaronian a few of the articles just to give you a little bit more of the information about this before it does go to discussion. We have a new executive director who will be introduced this next week, and will be at the meeting in December for the Regional Transportation Commission. So we should see some changes come out of that when we catch them here. We also have another director, a new director for our PV Gallery, and she'll come at another time and do a small introduction. An excellent exhibit there at our gallery right next to the YMCA, so I'd encourage you to take a look at the art that's in there for the new exhibit. And we have an Ag History dinner function that will help as a fundraiser for the fairgrounds this Saturday, and so hopefully we'll have good attendance for that. And the Salvation Army is going to have a lunch next Tuesday to help with our local facility here, the shelter and the food that's provided there. So that fundraiser is going to be held again Tuesday, and it's at the fairgrounds. And McDonald's is also going to be serving breakfast on Thanksgiving Day, and there should be some news that'll come out on that here shortly if anybody's interested in volunteering. And that concludes some of my remarks.
Thank you very much. Member Garcia?
I had the opportunity to participate in a focus group with the Santa Cruz County Office of Education. They wanted to get community input in regards to their development of their strategic plan, and I was invited. We first were given data on the performance and progress of our students. It was disappointing to see that in the areas of math, English language, and graduation rates, Hispanic Latino students were the lowest. We began the input process by identifying the strengths of the COE services. We then identified problems and issues and made recommendations for solutions, which we prioritized. The expectation is that this information will be used to inform the COE on how they can work better with the school districts, all the school districts in the county, the nonprofits, the governmental agencies such as Watsonville City, parents, and the community to better support our students. A few of us on the council have been strong advocates of housing affordability. In fact, some of us have organized citywide and district meetings to inform the community of affordable housing programs that the city has, but for purchase. However, an area that needs more attention is that of housing for renters. I recently met with our city manager and our police chief who has experience with housing. I described what I would like to see to protect our renters from injustices and also to support the landlords who have a lawful real estate business. It was agreed that the best housing practices of San Jose, the city of San Jose, Oakland, and Glendale would be examined. The city has hired a consultant to examine the housing programs that we have presently. A report will be given back to the council in January or February, and at that time, the council will also receive possible options that we could take in to address the housing for rentals, because that's a humongous issue that we need to address here in Watsonville. Finally, I want to thank all the voters in District 5 who voted for me. As of 5 p.m. this afternoon, I was at 66.70%, which is about 35 points ahead of my opponent. So it looks like I will be winning my reelection, but it won't be certified until December the 6th. And I'm just so excited that my constituents in District 5 believe that I needed to come back and continue the advocacy for them. So I'm really looking forward to the next 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Gonzalez?
Good evening, folks. I'll keep mine short because, like I said, I did attend the VA parade. I walked. I am a veteran. I served on the first of the 149th of Company B here in Watsonville. I actually was one of the crewmen that drove the tank down in the parade. So I was given that privilege every other year to drive it because we had to take turns. But I did feel honored to be there and present the award to Fred Martinez. And again, the main thing is don't forget. Don't forget the vets. Even the vets from the Gulf War. I had a brother that served in the Gulf War. It's just not about World War I or II, but it's about all the engagements that our veterans have been in. And with that, I'll leave that. And again, the Red Kettle Kickoff Luncheon, don't forget about that. My councilman mentioned that. I went to Lightning Talks, 150 years at the library. It was a good gathering of folks. It was a good storytelling by the speakers. We had a really good time there. I went today to the pedestrian and bicycle safety audit at the Watsonville High School. And what we did is we did an audit at the 3 o'clock getting out time to observe the movement of the students, the parents, everybody, sidewalks, lights. And it's really interesting. We really need to educate our community, especially our youth. It was really frightening to see youth walking around with ear on them and oblivion to what everything was going on. They were just crossing the street, not even looking. And for some instances, I was just like, whoa, So it is going to take a lot of education to our community to be aware of your surroundings, because the vehicle sometimes doesn't see you coming out like you don't see the vehicle. And it takes two parts to make sure that we all stay safe. The other one I want to present is the second annual Shelter to Home Benefit Dinner and Silent Auction that's going to happen this Thursday at 5 to 8 p.m. here at the Civic Plaza. So I invite you all folks to come out. We always want to help out the homeless and the homes, the need of residents. It's just like my councilman Rebecca said. We need to start really looking at these issues and addressing them. District 2, the roads. Our water main line was completed. I commend the staff. Good job, staff. Actually, they're paving the roads. All the temporary trenches are being removed, and the streets are looking good. I did a walkthrough, and I thank them. I thank them for all the hard work that they do. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Member Hernandez.
First I want to thank and congratulate all the council members for all the work that they do in the community. They're always going out to different activities and things that are going to make Watsonville a better place. So I want to thank you guys for doing all the work that you do. A lot of it's in cold mornings and late in the evening when it's cold, and it's their own personal time, and so they continue to go to these events, and whether it's, bike and pedestrian safety or housing or different events in the community, they're always there. So I'd like to thank them. I got the opportunity to attend a Vision Zero Bike and Pedestrian Safety Conference in New York City. They invited all the cities that have a Vision Zero plan. There was some awesome takeaways that I learned about communities that have, that have dropped their rate of collisions, bike and pedestrian fatalities, and injuries. And Portland and New York City were two of the cities that dropped within 4 years by 50%, or almost 50%, 147, 151. And they did it two very different ways, too. And it was really interesting because Portland has gone the way of lowering speed limits all over their city. So they lowered them. What they figured is that they lowered them in neighborhoods and schools down to 20, and then they lowered them by 5 miles everywhere else. So there isn't, within the city limits, there's nowhere that people can drive. There's a speed limit above 40. 40 is the highest it goes in the city limits. And so the other thing they've done, of course, is the bike infrastructure, bike and pedestrian infrastructure, stuff like the protected bike lanes, the green bike lanes, the flashing beacons. They've done some road channeling and made sure that they reapply paint on all the roads as well, including the outside lane. They said that really helped. New York City, on the other hand, instead of lowering the speed limits, they put about 500 speed cameras throughout the city to get people to slow down. And so and of course they also did the bike and pedestrian infrastructure, stuff like the bike lanes. They got them all over the city. And it lowered, between those two different things, the two different cities were able to bring down bike and pedestrian fatalities and major injuries by 50%. The other notable thing is that they've gotten people, they increased the amount of people riding bicycles in both cities and the amount of people walking in both cities. So I think it was a win-win for everyone. And I think that as a Vision Zero city, I think that we should be looking at some of the things like lowering the speed limit by 5 miles. Thank you.
Mr. Hernandez, thank you very much for your hard work for the city and all the council members. You have a very hard-working group of council members here, and you know, they do spend a lot of their personal time on these issues. I also want to congratulate all the workers on the election. You know, we had a record turnout in Watsonville, and all our staff turned out and did everything they could to try and accommodate all the many folks who wish to vote in our weekend voting and the 2 days before Election Day and the long hours spent on Election Day. So thank you to staff that rolled up their sleeves and worked hard to accommodate the public and make that process work and make it comfortable too. You've already heard that the RTC will be here on the 15th for the Unified Corridors meeting. And you've already heard that we've done the traffic audit at Watsonville High. They're going to be doing traffic audits at all the schools, or most of the schools, and trying to see what kind of ideas can come up for the public as well as the schools and the parents for safer drop-off and pick-up, and whatever we can do engineering-wise and whatever they can do organizational-wise to try and make that a better experience. This Saturday on the 17th at 10 a.m., we'll be having the mayor's bike ride. It'll be the Bike Ride for Health. It's out on the Salsipuedes levee across from the Buddhist church. And so look for us there, and please come and join us for a short, easy, family-focused bike ride. Thanks for those that attended Veterans Day. I was unable to attend as I was out of town, but I want to thank Aurelio for being present and helping out, and congratulations to all the vets. We do have speaking of the air quality, we do have a strike force of four firefighters from Watsonville at the Butte County Paradise campfire. And we've seen the smoke in the air, and we've seen how difficult it is to breathe. There is a program by the Monterey Bay Regional Air Authority to replace wood-burning stoves, and you can access that information through the Regional Air Board, which Felipe and I both sit upon, trying to make Watsonville and our entire region a cleaner air area. They also have some rebates or incentives for electric car purchases too. So take a look at the Monterey Bay Regional Air Board and see if there's something there that you might be able to use. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone coming up. Thank you. Let's see if City Manager has anything to report at this time.
Nothing to add at this time, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have Mr. Attorney, do we have a report out of closed session?
We do, Your Honor. We had one item the council received a report on in closed session. That's item A1A, Del Mar Food Products. The council received a oral report on that item, but took no final action tonight, Your Honor. And if I may, I want to alert the public on item 9A that there is a replacement resolution on that. The staff report is unchanged, but the resolution is changed, and a copy of that resolution, actually multiple copies of that resolution, are in the vestibule out there, and I believe the council has already received a copy of the substitute.
No, the council has not yet received that or reviewed it, so please make that available to the
We'll
council.
get that to you.
And we'll get to that item on our agenda at the proper time.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Attorney?
That's all. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Let's move on to reports to the council. This requires no action, but we're going to have a presentation by the Watsonville Police Department on police response to loud music complaints. So speak up and make it loud. And proud.
Good evening, Council, Mayor, and everyone here out in the community. Buenas noches. My name is Jorge Zamora. I'm a captain with Watsonville Police. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our response to loud parties here in the city. So typically, when we get a call from anyone in the community about a loud party, our officers respond, and they will make contact with the residents of the home, whether it's a homeowner or a renter. We'll identify who they are, and then we will tell them that there's been a complaint. And the complaint is that they're being a little too loud. So what we do usually is we tell them to turn it down or take the party inside and essentially give them a warning. And then we also tell them that if we have to come back, they could potentially be cited for a municipal code violation or for a penal code violation, depending on the circumstances. So if we do go back, then we will tell them the party's either going to be shut down or they're going to be cited or both. And so the Muni Code, the Watsonville Municipal Code 5-8.02A essentially says that between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., if a police officer shows up, or if there's music or sounds that are offensive to anyone, we can issue a citation. And that citation is it's a $100 citation. And from January to October of this year, we responded to 221 calls of loud music. And we issued 3 citations. So you might ask, why is the citation rate so low? Well, most people are cooperative and they will comply with what we're asking. And we want people to have a good time and enjoy their parties and do what it is that they need to do to have a good time. So if we have to go back, then if we cite them and we go back, and we have to cite them again, then that fine is $150. And that's Watsonville Municipal Code 5-8.03. And again, that fine is $150. And 415 is the penal code. It's a California penal code for disturbing the peace. And this is a little bit different because the elements for this particular section, we need to have a victim that is willing to file charges or sign a citation to take this person to court for the violation. And we, as police officers, can't be victims to this particular code. So here, it requires a person to willfully and maliciously cause loud and unreasonable noise. And what's important here is that there has to be somebody that is, or there has to be someone that is annoyed by whatever sound is occurring. And the intent, or what's important here to remember, is that the intent has to be present. So if I respond to someone's home and I tell them that we received a complaint and they have to either shut down their music or whatever it is that they're doing because it's bothering their neighbor, and then we return and they continue to do that, then we can infer that the intent is there to bother their neighbor. But again, that's we don't issue too many of these. I myself have never issued one of these citations, and the reason for that is most people want to remain anonymous when they call the police department, and most people don't want to go to court or take their neighbor to court. So in a nutshell, that's kind of how we respond to most loud music complaints and parties. I don't know if the council has any questions for me.
Of course, the council always has questions for you. That's why you're here.
I figured as much, Mayor.
Well, thank you for sharing with us that there is a mechanism that neighbors can utilize, and I understand the reluctance to utilize that. But 221 calls is pretty significant, and so I'm glad that those folks piped down. So we'll say thank you to good neighbors. So in reading the ordinance and studying up on this issue, I know that it's not just loud parties or music emanating from a residence, that it's also covers other types of noise, like maybe boom boxes and cars?
Yes, so it's any sound that would disturb your peace, essentially. So it could be a jackhammer, it could be a lawnmower, it could be any of those things that would disturb your peace would apply.
So keywords are willful and malicious?
Correct.
How about guys with really loud mufflers? Is that willful or?
Well, again, it has to be, we have to prove that the intent is willful. And if that's the case, then we would use a different section, which would be in the vehicle code. And I don't particularly know that section off the top of my head, but it is available for us as a tool.
So that would be under kind of a different scenario for just loud
Yes,
pipes.
correct.
Thank you. Let's see, Council's got lots of questions here. Let's go to Councilmember Garcia first, then Councilmember Gonzalez.
Actually, it's not a question, it's a compliment. In terms of my personal experience in calling the police, I have a neighbor behind me. They just love to have parties, and they usually hire either live music or DJs. And so I called twice, and the police came out quickly and stopped the music. And this is after midnight. Stopped the music. And the third time I called, I suspect that they got a citation because my house was egged the next morning. I'm making a conclusion. I don't know that to be true, but okay. But since then, it's been over a year now. They continue to have their parties, but at 10 o'clock, they turn their music off. So they did learn what the rules were, and so I commend you for being there and at least helping me personally with this loud music. And people just like to have parties and have fun, but I think 10 o'clock is late enough for that loud music. So thank you.
Sorry your house was egged.
What?
Sorry your house was egged.
Oh, well.
But thank you for the compliment.
Well, it did a lot of cleaning.
Member Gonzalez?
Yeah, again, good work. 221 calls, that's a lot of police time, a lot of man hours there. But I have a question in regards to, I know everybody enjoys their music and everybody likes to have parties, and it's kind of a cultural thing in the city of Watsonville. But at the same time, we've observed some neighbors that do it continuously every weekend. And I've been approached to the point where they say they think that their neighbor's actually renting out their house to have parties.
And my question is, when the residents have more than 50 people on their property and are saturating our streets with the cars, because it happened to me, I even had a party girl park in my driveway, and as I was approaching my driveway, I asked them to move, and they go, "Why?" And I'm like, "Well, it's my driveway." Kind of a deal. So it is a problem in the city where sometimes some residents continuously do this. What's the I guess the manner that you deal with these folks? I mean, is there a way to tell them that you're oversaturating your property with people? You should have this at a hall or at a park or.
Yeah, so, and I'm actually glad that you asked that question. So I kind of look at it this way. So everybody has a boss, right? And in that home, somebody is the boss of that home. And we can go directly to that person and explain what it is that they're doing that's causing issues in that neighborhood. And we could even take it as far as citing that owner for the activity that's going on there. And then another piece, if I could back up, is it's important if it's happening that much, it's important for those folks to meet with us so that we can try and mitigate some of that, some of those problems. And we have responded, and it doesn't happen a lot, but we have responded to those types of parties. And, we're knocking on the door and no one's answering, and we're pretty much being ignored. So there are things that we can do to encourage people to come out and leave the party. Some of the things that we've done is we've cited people for parking citations. In one particular incident that I remember, we started towing cars because they were blocking people's driveways, just like you roll up to your house and it's blocking your driveway, or it's in your driveway and they're not supposed to be there. And we start towing cars, and as soon as the partygoers find out that that's what's happening, nobody wants to get a ticket and nobody wants to get their vehicle towed. And that usually solves a problem. We don't do that often. I mean, this was years ago. But those are a few ways that we can deal with it. But I'd encourage you to have your neighbors contact us. They can contact me, and we can try to work something out.
One more question. So when you have live music, you're required to have a permit, right?
Correct.
According to the code. So when they don't have that permit to have live music, what actions do you guys take? Do you guys actually shut them down, or do you say just lower your music?
Again, it depends on the complaint and whether or not if it's a problematic home. We do have the authority to cite someone if they don't have a permit. But again, it's just one of those things where we want people to have a good time, but at the same time, we don't want them to disturb their neighbors. And if it's one of those things that where it continually happens, then we may just get there and cite them.
Yeah, and I bring this up because, we really enforce our yard sales.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have a permit posted, they tell you to put everything away. And I don't see why we shouldn't be able to do that with folks that don't have a permit to have live music and ask them to, put it away.
Sure.
Councilmember Hernandez.
Now, where do car alarms sit in this whole thing? People's car alarms that keep going off all night.
So, and again, with those
every night.
Every night. So with those two things, we are able to tow the vehicle under the vehicle code if the alarm is not stopping. But again, that's a separate code. Under the 415 section, the California Penal Code, there has to be an intent. So the owner has to have the intent to disturb your peace. With the municipal code, we could do that. We could cite as well. One of the problems that we run into is we will get the call, respond, and then there's no noise. Right? So it's difficult for us to cite for the municipal code. And again, the person calling, who usually wants to remain anonymous, is reluctant to sign a citation.
And the shutdown time is 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. And then after 10 p.m. is there a certain amount of noise that is allowed, like a certain decibel after 10 that is allowed? I'm just wondering because sometimes there's people that are just watching TV loud, whether it's like a NFL, you know, they sometimes, last night the game went on after 10, or like the World Cup or UFC match that's going on, and people come together and congregate and, you know, make noise. Does that, I was wondering, is that also part of it, or is there certain decibels that are allowed after 10?
No, it really has to do with whether or not the sound that is occurring, whether or not it's disturbing somebody's peace. So if it's loud enough to disturb someone, if it's 50 feet, if I can hear it from 50 feet away, then that's enough. Then that would be enough.
50 feet? Is there a decibel or some kind of noise that happens before 10? Or can they be as loud as they want? They can have the Who concert there.
Yeah. So I've never used a decibel device. We don't have them at the police department. And even during the day. So if something is occurring during the day, and say somebody's playing music from their home really loud, or their TV's on really loud, and
Or they just have too many amps and mega
so
speakers.
in that case, I wouldn't, as a police officer, wouldn't be able to cite them for it, because I can't be a victim of that California code, but you would. So you would be able to sign a citation and file a complaint against your neighbor.
But then that's when you have to,
That's when you would have to go to court.
that's when you get the situation like Capitola, the dog barking. Speaking of dog barking.
So all you people out there playing a Who concert, make sure you just turn it down after 10. Let's take this out to the public and see if the public has a comment on this, and then we'll return it to the council after public comments, unless the council wants to go first. Is there a question?
One question is, do you require the posting to be on the outside when there's permits issued? So that people know in the public that there was actually a permit issued for any of the bands or whatever is going on in terms of the parties?
Not to my knowledge, no.
So you won't know unless you've knocked on the door that there's actually, nor do we know that they've actually got the permission because nothing's being posted. Can we have it set up so that it's posted so people do know that they've actually filed for the necessary permits for the music?
Yeah, we can certainly look at that. The one thing that we do is once we get the permits, then those are distributed to our officers in roll call, so we know where the parties are going to be at. And then when we show up to a party, then we typically will ask them if they have a permit.
So you'll know, but the neighbors won't necessarily.
Correct.
And there's a lot of these porta potties as well. Is there a permit that's necessary for that, or is it just convenience? I mean, we're seeing them in the front lawns. So I just don't know whether that's part of this process of, you know, sanitation issue or permits to be able to do that. I mean, it goes with a lot of people coming out in their front yards using them and bringing those into view and whatnot. Is there a process with that?
I don't have the answer to that question when it comes to porta potties, but we can look into it. If I don't know if that.
I mean, sometimes they stay there well after the event itself. You know, might be because of being picked up. But I just think for a sanitation purpose of having a porta potty sitting in somebody's front yard for a week, that there could possibly be some issues with that, or needs. How do we address it if they still, aren't picked up? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the rules are with that.
I could chime in here real quick as well to save you from having to answer the porta potty question. So that is typically a code enforcement issue, and as the mayor and council know, we have had some issues with that over the past year. In those cases, we've been successful in working through a progressive enforcement process with our code enforcement team of addressing those issues. There are very few circumstances in which a porta potty would be allowed in a front yard. It's typically in the course of a construction project, which would be permitted, but not in the case of house parties.
Member Bilicich.
I just wanted to say that I think it's becoming more to the forefront because people aren't going to a hall, and they're using their home like a hall. They end up with, you could have 50 people there. There are tents in the yards, tents on the side of the house, live bands. the noise really bothers people. And so when you say after 10 o'clock, you've got people at 8 o'clock saying, when is that thing going to stop? And it's because they're live bands, and it's a home is not, you know, a live band shouldn't be for this big party. There's no parking, and so they have invaded the neighborhood with all of these cars. The live bands, I hear this all the time, and the tents where they put all these people. What are I mean, is it just 10 o'clock? Can't do anything before 10 o'clock?
So yeah, so what we can, but again, the problem that we run into is most people will not want to file a complaint against their neighbors.
No, because they don't want eggs on their house. They don't want retaliation. And I don't know, maybe something different needs to happen here, because people shouldn't have to have loud music and live bands right next door to them for a long period of time. Just a comment.
Thank you. Let's see if anybody in the public wants to address this issue for us here. Be nice and loud and proud.
Well, you can always count on Steve Trujillo to be nice and loud and proud, whether he's elected or not. The issue in Pajaro Village has always been, for the 3.5 years I've lived there, the wonderful racetrack at the fairgrounds on Friday night. The noise is pretty loud, and we're a long way from 50 feet away. It's quite a few more feet than that. And I've had neighbors come to me and say, Steve, can't you do something? You're a member of the HOA, Board of Trustees. Well, I have called into the police department, and they have said, well, it's outside our jurisdictional limits. So because it's in county territory, there's nothing we can do. So I've called the sheriff, and the sheriff said, well, they have a permit. So can you resolve this interest of mutual conflict of interest, where seniors want peace and quiet on a Friday night, and those who love to run their race cars around the track at the county fairgrounds wish to do so?
I don't think anybody has an answer to that one.
I stopped the audience.
Let's see if anybody else from the public has got a better question or an easier question to answer. Seeing no one approaching the podium, I'll say thank you to Captain Zamora for a thorough, and we expect all the problems to be solved. You know, after
Correct.
this discussion,
Yes.
we won't hear any more bad noise. Only the kind of music that we like, right? Because noise is kind of subjective, and I see a lot of guys really enjoying their music, and sometimes I kind of wonder if that's the music that I enjoy. But that's the part of the freedom that we enjoy in this country. Hernandez?
Well, in my district, those parties happen all the time, but I got the privilege and benefit of getting invited to all those parties.
Right.
So.
The food is good. Ms. Coffin Gomez? Oh, good. Well, I thought you had your hand up for a moment, but seeing no more public input and no more answers from the council on this daunting task, let's just remember that neighbors can be good neighbors and solve problems, or they can have a visit from the police. You decide. This brings us to our next item on the agenda. This is our consent agenda. Consent agenda consists of the minutes of item B, authorizing purchase from sole source from Trafficware Group, and item C, execution of agreement terminating the owner participation agreement from Minabiao Business Park. Do we have some discussion on well, we're going to ask if anyone from the public would like to comment on our consent agenda. This is the time for the public to express their thoughts on our consent agenda. Seeing no one approaching the podium for the consent agenda, let's turn this back to council. Councilmember Coffin Gomez.
As predictable, it's over 100 we're spending on the lights. Can we get an idea about the frequency or the number of lights that this is going to affect, when it's going to take place, and what it really will benefit the community? On item B, which is the resolution for spending $195,000, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Adolfo Gonzalez, Traffic Operations Manager with Public Works. The purchase requisition, or this particular project, includes approximately 9 traffic signals, which is the Green Valley Corridor from Carnation through Harkins Loop, including the Caltrans location at Main Street in Green Valley. So what this purchase does is it allows us to purchase new and updated equipment, traffic signal controller equipment, and software that will allow us to better coordinate or synchronize our traffic signals along Green Valley Road and work in conjunction with the system that we already have on Freedom Boulevard.
Now, we've had some issues with the lights the past week or so, and will this remedy some of that issue, or is this just a flow issue that we're doing with this improvement project?
The issues that we've been experiencing over the last couple of weeks along Freedom Boulevard are due to power spikes that we've been having from PG&E. So we are looking at addressing that, but again, these two systems will work in coordination with each other.
Thank you.
Member Bilicich.
I have a question about Freedom Boulevard. Now, Freedom Boulevard is in sync now for quite a while. And some of these left turn lanes, like on Martinelli or Crestview, there are too many cars that get in there and they can't turn left because the signal doesn't turn. So if we are going to continue to keep, because what happens, then the inside lane gets backed up because they have to stop and they're in the lane because they're waiting to turn left. Either we're going to have to change that or the lane is going to have to be longer. On the other end, where you turn on Alta Vista, where you turn left, I think it's okay, but the one on Crestview is too short. So is there a way to cut that divider off or back or something?
So the answer is twofold. We have made some modifications as of last week, some fine-tuning to the Freedom Boulevard system, where we've reduced the time that the system is in effect. We've reduced it to only come on or turn on during the AM, midday, and PM peak hours. So as opposed to from 6 a.m. until 10 p.m. So that will address in part the issues at Crestview. We are looking at the possibility of extending that left turn pocket at Crestview and Freedom and possibly cutting back that median island. So we are actively exploring that option.
Well, that's good. That's good. I mean, things take time. I think Freedom Boulevard is much better than it's been in a long time. But sometimes it needs that little tweaking.
Yes, and we're continuously looking at it and fine-tuning it. It's an ongoing process.
I heard people say, too, on Clifford, they can't turn left on Clifford to get on Freedom Boulevard. It's a long, long wait.
And again, the changes that we've implemented as of last week should have addressed or would address a lot of these concerns that have been brought up to us.
Good. Thank you.
Anyone else with a question at this time? Let me ask you this, Mr. Gonzalez. If we synchronize all the lights and they're all green along Green Valley Road, and I'm sorry that Captain Zamora is no longer in the audience, but I bet he's outside listening, that what's going to prevent people from hitting 90 miles an hour on Green Valley Road?
The way the system works, it's designed so that it functions at the specific speed limit for that corridor. So if a vehicle is traveling above the posted speed limit, which is what the corridor is designed for, they will hit a red light at every intersection, as opposed to maintaining a constant speed of, I believe it's 30 on Freedom Boulevard, and maintaining that green band.
Well, that'll be very interesting to see how it actually works, because, you know, the speed limit on Green Valley is about 45, I think, at this time, but and there are sections of it that are different near school zones and closer to the intersection, but people are topping out at 60, 70. So we'll see how that works.
Thank you.
Good luck. Councilmember Bilson.
I just wanted to make a comment about Martinelli Street, that Public Works should be commended for the work on Martinelli because it's striped. It looks great. I don't know how many more streets we have, but that one is, people have been talking very, very positively. So thank you.
That's good to know.
If there's no other comment, I'll move the motion for the consent
Second.
agenda.
We have a motion by Kaufman Gomez, a second by Hernandez, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to get it right here. People criticize me for recognizing the wrong council members sometimes. Let's, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call, please. It's on our consent agenda.
Viereses,
Yes.
Kaufman Gomez,
Yes.
Garcia,
Yes.
Gonzalez,
Yes.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Hurst.
Yes, and so approved. Thank you very much. This brings us to our next item. Look at this. It's not even, what time is it? It's not even 8 o'clock yet, and we're getting to public hearings and ordinances appeals. This is moving as fast as the green traffic on Green Valley Road. Here we are at item number A, consideration of approval of a disposition of development agreement between the City of Watsonville as the housing successor to the former redevelopment agency and Habitat for Humanity Monterey Bay, a nonprofit public benefit corporation for the property located at 36 Airport Road, APN number 391-20. We're going to have a staff report and a chance for council questions, a public hearing where the public can express their desires on this, and then a chance for council discussion and maybe even a resolution. So let's have the staff report, please.
Thank you, Mayor Hurst, members of the council, Susie Merriam, Community Development Director. I am here with what may be a familiar face to some of you, with Jan Davison. She was previously our Redevelopment and Housing Director a few years ago. She's retired now, but she has been working as our consultant on matters relating to the successor housing agency and redevelopment projects. So she is going to be presenting the staff report tonight. She has been working on the DDA with our housing attorneys, Gresham and Savage, to put this together. So take it away, Jan.
Thank you, Susie. Good night,
Thank you, Ms. Davison, for being here. Didn't you have something to do with this building way back in another century?
I might have.
I'm just trying to remember the past. Thank you. Please proceed and be loud and proud like the rest of our group here this evening.
Okay, thank you.
No noise ordinance here.
Good night, Mayor and council members. It's nice to be here again. It's my pleasure to present this disposition and development agreement with Habitat for Humanity Monterey Bay. And their executive director, David Foster, is here, as well as some of their board members, and I'm sure they'll want to address you as well. But basically, the former redevelopment agency acquired the property at 36 Airport Road in 2003, I believe, basically for an extension of our youth build program. This is where the property is located. It's on Airport Road, and it's immediately adjacent to Evans Court, which is developed with single-family homes. And this is also the assessor's parcel map for it. We acquired the site for $825,000 in 2003. At that point in time, there was an existing structure on the site that we also had to acquire, and it has since been developed or demolished. We were looking at expanding the youth build program, but it unfortunately was discontinued. So then we decided, okay, we're going to use this for affordable housing, since it was acquired with former redevelopment agency housing funds that are a restricted source of funding. We entered into an unsuccessful disposition and development agreement with the adjacent property owner to try to incorporate it into a residential development that he was doing. Then the redevelopment agency and redevelopment agencies throughout the state was dissolved, so we lost all of our ongoing RDA housing funding. It doesn't exist. We have nothing left but the assets that we had at the point in time when the redevelopment agency was dissolved. So we then initially entered into unsuccessful negotiations with a local shelter. It's a challenging site because of the size and because of the required infrastructure. Whoever develops this site has to complete the half street of Evans Court to city standards. So for the yield of units versus the cost of infrastructure is quite a challenge. We were approached in June of 2017 by Habitat for Humanity, who are interested in the site for an affordable self-help single-family ownership project. So we began our discussions with Habitat at that time. It's resulted in a disposition development agreement, the draft agreement that's before you tonight, and that agreement requires Habitat of Humanity to pay all the costs of escrow, title, entitlements, and permits. There's no reduction in fees. They're paying all the standard fees that any developer would pay. They're required to cause the construction of the maximum number of single-family residents that will be allowed by the city through the city's standard entitlement process. We estimate that will be 7 to 9 units. Depends on whether there's density bonuses afforded, whatever happens, but it's through the city's entitlement process, which is not started at this point. They're going to sell the units to first-time home buyers who are at or below Santa Cruz County low income, which is typically 80% of median limits. Right now, the maximum income to be eligible to acquire one of these properties for a family of 4 would be $89,450. That's going to change because that changes each year, and these homes we anticipate will not be available and developed for probably a 5-year point in the future as Habitat goes through its entitlement process and it's securing financing. But the DDA does require them to back into a sales price using the formula that is required by the former redevelopment agency law that's still in effect. And what that does is it results in a maximum housing cost. It's not a price, it's a cost. It's the most that the eligible participants can pay towards housing. And that housing cost includes principal, interest, taxes, insurance, homeowners' dues, any special assessments, if there were special assessments against the properties, etc. So it's a complicated formula, but it's specified in the disposition and development agreement, so we know the process that will have to be taken. But at this point in time, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what interest rates are going to be in 5 years when these are ready to be sold. We don't know until they go through the entitlement process how many bedrooms are going to be in each unit. We anticipate these are going to be 3 and 4 bedroom units, but that may change as they go through the entitlement process. So the price varies on all of those things, the interest rate, the mortgage term, the number of units in the bedroom. So the DDA specifies the formula, but not the price. Habitat will be required to form a homeowners association to cover common area maintenance and potentially other amenities if that's required through the entitlement process. They'll have to record affordability and occupancy agreements with each buyer. These have to be principal residents. There are with the maximum occupancy that would be allowed for a unit is 2 persons per bedroom plus 1. They have to commence construction with 5 years from the close of escrow and complete all of the units within 10 years of the close of escrow. And the close of escrow is going to take place within 90 days of the completion of at the completion of their due diligence period, which is a 90-day period after they get their prelim. So we have to give them a preliminary title of insurance through escrow. They review that, decide whether there's any title exceptions on that or whether that's acceptable to them, and then commence their due diligence. Then escrow will close. Habitat is also required to secure all the required financing, included if necessary, financial assistance for individual buyers. And I'll let Habitat talk to you about that, of what types of financing they're looking at, what their plans are in that respect. But typically they do rely a lot on self-help. The buyers have to contribute some of the labor, and on donations of labor, material, volunteers. So it's a complex project as far as management that Habitat will be responsible for. The city's obligations or opportunities through this process is to transfer the land to Habitat for a nominal amount. And that nominal amount is $1. We have looked at the fair reuse value, and the summary report talks about that. That's a part of your package. As far as based on the affordability constraints, the limited number of units that can be produced on this land, and the high cost of the infrastructure that has to be developed, they can't afford to pay for land. So the land is our contribution to the project. That's our only contribution. They're not asking for any other financial contribution or any other assistance. We will be responsible to monitor the construction schedule and all the requirements to make sure Habitat has actually complied with the requirements in the disposition and development agreement. We will review and approve all the sales contracts and all the affordability documents to make sure that they comply with our requirements. And then we have the opportunity, but not the obligation, to retake title to the property if Habitat fails to meet the development timelines. If they can't get all of their entitlements, the financing they need to at least start the infrastructure and the first unit within 5 years, we can retake title to the property. There are resale restrictions, and these resale restrictions, so that after there's a first buyer, the Habitat has the first right of refusal to reacquire any unit. And they have a unique program, and they can talk to that in more details, but they reacquire the unit for an amount equal to the principal that's been repaid on the homeowner's loan. And then Habitat resells it to another income-eligible household that meet all the requirements as the original buyer. The city has the second right of refusal to reacquire any unit. And the city's is going to be at either the amount equal to the principal repaid on the amortizing loans, or at an affordable sales price, which is determined by that initial formula that establishes the maximum price that a buyer could buy. And we can then resell it to another income-eligible household. That's if neither Habitat or the city decide to exercise our option, the homeowner may then sell to another income-eligible household at an affordable sales price. In perpetuity, these resale restrictions stay on the property, so they will always remain affordable. It will never revert to a market rate unit. What are our advantages of entering into the DDA right now? And the DDA is the Disposition and Development Agreement. There are a lot of unknowns. I mean, we don't have a crystal ball, so we can't answer some finite questions. We can't tell you this is going to be the absolute maximum income that a household can have to participate, because it'll be at whatever it is at the time that the units are ready to be sold. We don't know what the interest rate will be. But the law requires that the disposition of housing successor real estate within 5 years of the time that the Department of Finance approved what's called our housing asset list, which occurred in 2012, and that may only be extended once. And we're in that extension period. If the land is not sold, we have to sell it at fair market value with no affordability restrictions. So we would then lose the ability to actually add to our affordable housing stock in the community. The other thing that's very important to understand is affordable housing financing is very complicated and almost always requires layering of multiple sources of different types of grants, loans, different state or federal programs. And a lot of these, in fact, I'd say almost 99% are competitive. And in order to be competitive, ownership of the land is often essential. So in order for Habitat to be able to secure financing, they've got to own the land. The one other advantage that's interesting is that the land will return to the tax rolls at close of escrow. Habitat is not tax exempt until such time as construction starts. So this land will return to our tax rolls now and will begin generating property tax for the general fund. So that's a large benefit. We don't know how the assessor, or what amount the assessor is going to value the property at that point in time. It definitely won't be for the dollar purchase price that Habitat will be paying us, but I'm sure they'll look at it as vacant land and come up with a value. So based on that, it's staff's recommendation that we adopt the resolution authorizing the city manager to execute the disposition development agreement and all documents necessary to implement the agreement. That would be the escrow papers, the affordability covenants, etc. And also give him the ability to make minor modifications thereto with the approval of city attorney. Because as you go through an escrow property, through escrow and through this whole process, you may find certain tweaks that have to be made, and we want to have that ability as long as it's not a substantial change. The resolution also includes making the CEQA finding, the California Environmental Quality Act finding, that this property is exempt as an infill project. So those are staff's recommendation. At this point in time, I can be glad to take any questions, or we could, at your choice, let Habitat address you with some of the input that they have.
Well, we do have a place on the agenda for the public hearing, and we'll hold Habitat to that one. Let's try questions from the council at this time. Councilmember Garcia.
First, I want to say I'm just so pleased that I see this as a partnership between the city and Habitat for Humanity, and I'm just so pleased that this could happen so that we can have more affordable housing. I only have one question. It was mentioned that the housing was going to be made available to first-time home buyers. And so my question is to Susie, will they be able to take advantage of our first-time home buyers or our down payment assistant programs?
Yes.
Yes, very good. Thank you.
Good. Who's next? Councilmember Bilicich.
Looks like a big contribution from the city. Tell me again, how large are these homes and how many people are the maximum in each home?
The maximum, it'll depend on the number of bedrooms in the units, and that'll be determined by the city's entitlement process. But the maximum occupancy is 2 people per bedroom plus 1. And that's federal law for what we can do as far as limiting occupancy on an affordable project.
So a 3-bedroom home will have 9 people maximum?
7 people maximum. Two persons per bedroom, 6.
Oh, plus
and
1
other,
for,
plus
not
1.
per bedroom.
Councilmember Kaufman Gomez. I wasn't sure Dr. Bilicich was finished yet.
No worries. So I'm doing some of the math, and I'm not sure the timing of the questions that I do have because I'm looking over this budget, what the city restrictions are in terms of the down payment assistance that they have. The report itself indicates that Habitat for Humanity would be available for the second portion of this. So now I'm just trying to figure out the combination between city assistance, what Habitat for Humanity is going to have, and then the overall cost. I mean, if these are at market rate and we're subsidizing through our program on top of a subsidy that we're giving Habitat to build them, then there's a tremendous amount of benefit. They're even below what even the low income levels would be receiving based on market and what this is giving me. I don't know if you want my math questions now or after we hear more from Habitat for Humanity, so just let me know
They may be able to give you a little more detail, but what I can explain to you is the infrastructure costs alone are estimated about 1.6 million. To try to get that back out of 7 to 9 affordable price-restricted units is pretty difficult. I mean, we're looking at a 100% affordable project. So, in perpetuity. So these will always be affordable. So that makes it very difficult, and that's why we've been unsuccessful with the shelter project in coming up with any kind of agreement. Habitat is willing to take this on because they, other than having to actually pay for things, they do it as a self-help project, so they require, and they can talk about how much contribution of labor the participants require. They have volunteers, but there's a lot of costs that can't be absorbed that way. The infrastructure is probably one of them because they have to build the infrastructure prior to or concurrent, which is something we're talking about, the first unit being built. So they have to finance that somehow. The math is what we're looking at, and from Habitat's original pro forma, there was a typo in the staff report. This is going to be about a $5.8 million project. They're not selling these units at market rate. They are selling them at a very much deferred price. What we've had to do to even make that possible is to allow a 40-year mortgage term, and Habitat can talk to you about that. But what we're looking at for Habitat to be able to have the cash flow to do the infrastructure and to continue their program, we're probably looking at a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage from a traditional lender, and Habitat can talk to you about their partner as far as that goes. And then Habitat will be making an additional deferred loan that actually will require payments beginning in year 31 through 40, that they're talking about at 0% interest, but just to be able to continue with this cash flow. The homes won't all be built at once. Habitat will be building them as they have the financing, so they're looking at building probably 2 to 3 units at a time. But they have to have them all done within the 10-year period.
The staff report reads, it should be noted that the DDA allows Habitat to sell the units at their appraised fair market value to an income-eligible household. So
that staff report has been revised. That's not correct.
Okay, because it wasn't part of anything that was given to us. The only thing that was given to us was the resolution. And so that's why I'm off here in terms of the appraised fair market value in this report.
My understanding was the staff report was re-entered into Granicus, the corrected version.
Okay, well, we haven't read the corrected version then. Because
Can staff please clarify what the correct numbers are for the council's benefit?
The correct number will be, we don't have it, they're not selling it at fair market value. They are going to be selling it at the price to be determined by the formula. And I can go into the formula, which is quite complicated, but it's in order to establish the sales price, you first have to establish the maximum housing cost. And to do that, you look at 30% or 70% of 30% of county median income based on the family size equivalent to 1 person per bedroom plus 1. So for instance, if you're trying to price a 3-bedroom unit, you have to look at 70% of median income for a family of 4. For a 5-bedroom unit, you'd be looking at for a family of 4, and you divide that by 12 to establish your maximum amount that they can pay towards housing.
Well, my understanding was a 4-bedroom was about $450,000.
That's not correct.
For the formula on some of the other sales, so are these the low or moderate?
These are low.
So these are at the very
80%.
low.
Not very low. These are low.
So we had 363,000. I think is one of the 3-bedroom units. Is that about what the starting point is looking like from the recent formula?
No.
Could we?
They'll be about 334, is my understanding. But they can't pay. That's the maximum price. But they can only pay up to 30% of their income. Typically, and what we've looked at, we'll go into the next one, for a 3-bedroom unit, a family could pay $1,524 a month total for principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and their homeowner's dues. For a 4-bedroom unit, and this is numbers today. These are going to change because that formula will change. For a 4-bedroom unit, they can pay $1,644 a month. Where that deviates is for households whose incomes are actually between 71% and 80% of county median income, because the formula is based on 70% of county median income. So if the actual household's income is higher, if they're at that higher range, they can pay 30% of their income, but they can pay no more than 30% of their income.
So based on this math, just off the top of my head, their mortgage is actually about $1,000, and they're getting subsidized on the remainder after you take taxes, insurance, and the HOA costs out, which are about $500 of that $1,524 figure.
Correct.
So $1,000 a month for the mortgage is probably putting them closer to maybe $150,000 loan or so. So there, I mean, there's
We're
going to be
looking at
sizable
loans of in around the $160,000 to $170,000 range is what
So-
we were looking at.
So $334,000 roughly, $160,000 is the loan, and the remainder is being subsidized on top of it being a low income already.
And that's where what we're hoping, they are eligible to participate in our down payment assistance program if there's funding at the time that we have it. We don't know that that program will still be in existence at that time. Habitat will provide some down payment assistance themselves and look at other sources to make sure, and it's Habitat's policy that no homeowner can pay more than 30% of their income.
So their rules trump our rules when it comes to the affordability, because we have a 45 ratio for the qualifications. So this is a much lower ratio for their income on their housing ratios.
I will let Habitat address that.
And so I want to make sure that there's not an issue with them getting a silent second from the city when the city's requirements are different than this particular program, and freeing up the funding on where affordable monies need to be
They would
used.
have to meet the guidelines for the city's program. They would be eligible if they meet the guidelines and if there's funding in those projects at the time that these units are available.
Well, I think guidelines is income, but also the guidelines for the silent second, which are going to be different than 30%. The city's guidelines are higher than 30% on their qualification for their debt to the income.
And I will let Habitat address it because their policy is 30%. So they may not qualify, or they may only be able to qualify for a portion.
Yeah, because what I'm looking at is we're doubling or tripling up a family instead of being able to use those resources for more families than just the one for, and I think the math on this is being done with 9 units on this parcel based on what I'm seeing so far on the budget items here too. I'll move on because I know that there's more from Habitat that's going to come up, but these others might be just quicker questions. I know we're using prevailing wages for the labor that's on here.
That's not correct. There is a provision in redevelopment law that if the only source of financing is assistance from redevelopment funds or redevelopment assets, there's no requirement for prevailing wage on residential projects. However, we have made Habitat aware that they are obligated to pay prevailing wage if required. Most of the other funding sources, if they're looking at state or federal funds, are going to require prevailing wage. But it's pretty hard if you're looking at volunteer labor and contributions to require prevailing wage.
Yeah, I'm just seeing it in the report, so that's why I'm come back and asking that particular question. And materials being purchased and local hires in the projects, I know that there's a lot of labor involved for the sweat equity of the parties. What's the requirement for the selected purchaser on their participation in the project?
Habitat will address that.
And if this doesn't finish in 5 years, we've already sold the property, how does it get revoked? So it comes back to
There's
the
a right
city?
of revision.
But-
And at our option, we take the property back.
Thank you. I'll wait for more questions later. Thank you.
Some more questions, please. Who had one next?
Fine. Yep.
Well, we'll have another shot at it, I'm sure. Let's open the public hearing then at this time, since the council's run out of questions, but not totally run out of questions. So open up the public hearing.
Good evening.
Welcome, sir.
Mayor Hurst and members of the council. David Foster, Executive Director with Habitat for Humanity, Monterey Bay. We've been serving the Santa Cruz and Monterey County area for 29 years now, and during that time we've completed construction on about 51 homes. 9 of those homes have been actually built in Watsonville. That was back in the 1990s. So we are very excited about the idea of coming back and getting involved with the city of Watsonville again. We have a very unique way of building our homes, and that is that we build our homes as a community project. About 80% of the labor is provided by volunteers from the community. We're working on the job site from Tuesday through Saturdays, and volunteers are there every day. All of our homeowners are, all of the homes are built as for home ownership. And unlike the TV program where you know, if somebody builds a custom home and then they provide it as a gift to a low-income family, Habitat believes in providing a hand up, not a handout. And our participating families are selected based on their housing need prior to the start of construction, and then they participate in the building process. They have to put in a minimum of 500 hours of what we call a sweat equity, helping to build, working alongside with the volunteers, building their homes and the homes and the homes of their neighbors. 500 hours is equal to about every Saturday for a year. So this is a real commitment from the families to make, and it means that they're really invested in their homes and in their communities. The home buyers carry then a conventional mortgage, and Habitat carries a fully deferred second loan. So that's the way that works. The first mortgage is the key one, and that one cannot exceed 30% of their income going towards the mortgage, the insurance, taxes, and especially the homeowners association fees and any other fees that are out there. Resale restrictions are then required so that the family, if they ever decide to sell, sells back to Habitat, or if we aren't around anymore, then back to the city, and the equity that they receive is equal to whatever amount they've paid down on their principal of their first mortgage. A repurchased home is then fixed up and resold by Habitat to another income-eligible family. And so what that means is
keep
that,
going, sir.
Thank you. That means that these homes, no matter how many times they pass from one homeowner to another, they remain permanently affordable. Studies have shown, and we all know from living in the real world, that housing affordability and stability are key indicators for children who will grow up to be happy, healthy, and successful adults. What we've learned at Habitat for Humanity is that once an affordable home ownership opportunity is provided, low-income families will stay permanently in those homes. Of the 51 homes that we've built so far over the last 29 years, only 5 of those families have resold back to Habitat. We've never had a foreclosure. What this means is that these homes are providing incredible stability to the participating families. It also means that these homes and these families are contributing to the stability of their neighborhoods where they're located. And it means that children grow up with their same friends and attend the same schools year after year. We're excited about the prospect of being able to build again in Watsonville. Land costs are such that affordable home ownership housing really can only happen when the land is donated. And so this is a great opportunity for Habitat and a wonderful gift from the city of Watsonville toward addressing the local critical need for affordable housing. Although we don't have a site plan yet, we are anticipating that we'll be able to fit 7 to 9 units on that site. And of course, that's by itself is at least a year-long process to go through the subdivision application process with the city of Watsonville. Watsonville is truly a community of families and a community of larger households, and we want to design these homes with the idea that we would market them and serve existing Watsonville residents. And we're looking at 3 and 4 bedroom units so that we can serve larger families. Being right near Freedom Elementary School makes this an excellent location for family housing. We also recognize the city's concern that these homes be maintained over time, and in order to accomplish this, we will design the homes so that, and the ownership of the homes, so that they include a homeowners association that will be responsible for maintaining the exterior paint and the front yards and any of the common area properties involved. This will go a long way to ensure that the neighborhood remains looking good and that the value of the homes is maintained. We're appreciative of this opportunity to work in partnership with the city and with your wonderful planning staff. And Jan, thank you so much through this incredibly complex DDA process. And we look forward to seeing that this project becomes a model of what affordable homeownership housing can offer to the community. Thank you, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Let's see if there's a question for Mr. Foster at this time. Councilman Gomez?
Yes, you've got my attention. I really commend this type of a project, and that's why I'm a little bit more focused on this. It's my background as well. So the questions I have is, given the affordability rate that we have here, can we do something more about the ADA for those that may be needing more of a wheelchair access? What we're having here with the affordable, we can't get anybody in a wheelchair on the second floor for their kitchen. And these are going to be large enough that we may have that capability that we could use these or see the benefit of some folks in the community that need something that's more of an ADA component.
Thank you for bringing that up. Our current housing project that we're doing in the city, in the county of Santa Cruz, in Live Oak, all of those homes were designed to be what's called have visitability standards, where the entire ground floor is wheelchair accessible, and that includes at least 1 bedroom and the bathroom on the ground floor. And then one of those units, which we're just about to start construction on, will be designed specially to be on the ground floor and will be fully wheelchair accessible. The unit after that one that we're going to be building starting next summer is going to be a special unit for a veterans build. So accessibility is definitely on the top of our minds. And it's not that much of an added expense to design it into the project from the beginning. It may mean that most of these homes would have a visitability standard for the ground floor, but we may also want to design one of the units at least that's single story only so that it can meet the full ADA compliant requirements.
That means a lot, because with our density factor here on the units, this is probably the last opportunity that we're going to see houses that are going to be on something larger than a 1,900 square foot print. Yeah. And with this opportunity, we should be looking at that, especially since we are on the lower scale, and the tendency of people with disabilities in terms of making it affordable for them would be really helpful to see a project like that come together. Now, you mentioned the resale is based on the principle that the current owner has if it were to be sold. But based on our formula here, which is the median and that 70% of every year this is going to change, will their resaleability be based off of this formula the given year that they want to sell it? Or is it based on year one when the house was given a final?
No, my understanding is that when they resell based on what they've paid off on their mortgage, on the principal of their mortgage. When Habitat repurchases it and decides to resell, they may set the price at the then affordable rate, which is 30% of of that 70% for that income for that family.
So we have a family here that's going in, and let's say it's $335,000 today, and they have a $200,000 loan that they've paid for 15 years. Maybe they've got $75,000 in equity. That's all they walk away with because that's all they paid on principal, rather than any type of affordability scale, because they would never be able to sell to move up if they were stagnated on the year of purchase.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's kind of this
right.
This compromise of you want to have the ability that a family can build equity, and as basically everything that they put towards their mortgage, towards the principal, that's going into a savings that they can take out when and if they decide to sell. So they are building equity. What they're not able to do is share in the speculative gain on the project. If nowadays, who knows, but if the home doubles in price in the next 20 years, they wouldn't be able to take advantage of that. But what it means is that when that home is resold to the next income eligible household, it remains affordable. So it's no matter how many times it turns over, it stays as a part of the affordable housing stock that the city owns, or not owns, but has control over.
Well, I like the retention because I know we've had an issue when the 08 crash happened. We lost quite a few out of our affordable based on the deed restrictions that sort of went away. So I'm glad to see that we have things in perpetuity here. But to be able to move up, let's say the family is now larger and they need to get another place that's bigger, they don't have that even on the affordability resale equity in terms of just the 70% median change. There's no advantage there, so you're not going to be able to get this for them to be able to sell.
They are building equity
right,
slowly.
But it's very.
The other thing that's happening is that if you look at it, the mortgage payment that they're making each month, including their HOA and everything else, is probably significantly below what the going rent is.
Yes, it is
now. So that always leaves the opportunity, if they want to, they can make a payment towards their principal and pay that down faster if they want to, or invest in other ways. So.
In the owner occupancy, you've got the language in there, so the requirement for owner occupancy.
Absolutely.
And then the other one too is the down payment requirements. I know the city generally requires a 3% down payment. What is the requirement here for a down payment?
I'm not sure, and it may change depending on who we're working with on the first mortgage and what their requirements are. Also, if there are funds, if either through Watsonville or through the state or wherever, if there are funds available for a down payment, we might take advantage of that in order to lower their mortgage amount. So it's so hard to guess right now. We looking at the state funds that might be available to help this project. We'll be going definitely after the Prop 1 funds, which did pass.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really important is that we have the matching funds, which is in the form of the donation of land, that makes it possible for us to go after Prop 1 funds. We don't have the Measure H funds to support it, but so it's kind of like piecing things together. We do depend a lot on making the savings by using the volunteer labor. And by the way, the 500 hours, that number came about, required of each family, does give us, by state law, an exemption from prevailing wage. So that's one of the reasons. I mean, that's not really the only reason, but that's one of the reasons to keep that number at 500 hours.
I had one more question. And
go ahead.
Can you describe a bit of the screening process for the applicants on what you're looking for criteria? I mean, I can only imagine how many people would be interested in doing something like this for the volume of applications.
Yeah. So we make our selection based on 3 basic criteria. First, they have to be income eligible, which is between whatever it is, 50% and 80% of the area median income, adjusted by family size. They have to be willing to participate with the 500 hours and say, yeah, we have a way to do that. And they have to also demonstrate then an actual need. for housing, either meaning that they're either paying more than 40% of their income for housing costs. In a lot of cases, we've got families that are easily paying 50%. So that's one of them, or if they're in an overcrowded situation, or if they're simply living in a home that has dilapidated conditions. So those would be the need criteria. Then we have a point score for that. If there's an obvious one that's at the top, we can select them. If we have a number of families that come in at the same point score, we figured out that the only real fair way to do that is a random drawing.
What about requirement or scoring in terms of living within this community and working in this?
And so I think that's one of the things that we'll have to work with the city of Watsonville to figure out. How do we give additional points for that? Or is it simply that we do the majority of our outreach in the city of Watsonville to make sure that we're getting applicants from Watsonville? I'm not quite sure exactly if it's a point score or if it's just the outreach. But truthfully, the homes that we're building in Live Oak, majority of those families are also coming from Watsonville. So.
I know the council has some more questions, but I want to make sure we get to all the public. This is the public hearing portion of the meeting. So, Aurelio, do you have a question for Mr. Foster right now?
No, I can wait.
Okay.
I want to hear from the public.
Thank you. Let's make sure that everyone from the public has an opportunity to address us as well, and then we'll have a chance for any clarifying questions, hopefully. So, welcome.
Good evening. My name is Marty Kavanaugh, and I happen to be the president of the Habitat for Humanity Monterey Bay Board of Directors. And I wanted to point out to the council that we have a number of our board members here this evening to support this. They're here by their own volition. Everyone here is a volunteer. We all help in some way to make sure Habitat for Humanity works in the community. Interesting, at the Santa Cruz County Affordable Housing Conference last spring, we learned that Watsonville has the highest need for affordable housing in this county. And so we're very, very happy to be able to work with you, the council, on developing this model. We're hopeful that we can finish 7 to 9 units in the time allotted. And I must say, we need the city to help us. We need donors. We need fundraisers. The reason why this piece of land wasn't picked up by a fair market developer is because there's no money in it to sell them for what we sell them for. We are here to help the community. And when we talked about the question of what if they needed equity, what if they wanted to sell it, we have a term in Habitat for Humanity called play it forward. Our goal is not to lose hold of the affordable housing projects that we have built, that we keep them in our entity and we play them forward to another family of need. And one of the things that helps us determine that family of need is, where do they live right now? What kind of conditions do they live in? Is it safe? Are the children able to have access to easily get to school in non-dangerous situations? Traffic and other things. How does that work for the family? So in addition to all of the financial aspects we talked about, I wanted to make sure you understood there's a human side. And the human side is probably the most important side that we build our Habitat for Humanity decisions upon. Our volunteers do a tremendous job, and we have a group of volunteers called regulars. And these are people who have dedicated 5 to 10 years, mostly of their retired life, to come every week and work at Habitat. And just a little tidbit for you, the current cost of construction is about 2/3, 1/3. 2/3 being the cost of labor, and 1/3 being the cost of materials. However, if you go and price a piece of sheetrock, you'll know that it's more than doubled in the last 2 years for a 4-foot by 8-foot sheet. So the cost of construction is going out. We want to take this on because we think it's the right thing to do for the people who live here and frankly want to stay here. Thank you.
And thank you very much for your volunteer leadership. Let's hear from any other member of the public who wishes to address us. This is a public hearing. Seeing no one rise to the podium, I'll close the public hearing and return it to council for their discussion, deliberation, further questions, comments. Let's go down the line with Member Garcia.
I'm not sure if I understood correctly, but in the presentation that was just given to us, I understood in terms of the family that's buying the house has to go through a conventional loan. And I heard about Habitat giving a second loan that I'm not quite sure about, but then I started thinking about those that would qualify for the Watsonville City Council affordable housing loans, either the down payment or first-time buyers. And so that's 3 loans. And so I just needed some understanding in terms of family being able to handle 3 loans.
As it's anticipated at this point in time, they would never be making payments. Any participant, any of our programs are deferred silent loans. They make no payments on those. What we're looking at is a conventional loan that they would be making payments on in probably a 30-year term from a conventional lender. The loan provided by Habitat, and we're looking at Habitat, they may find some other entity that might be willing to do it, would be a deferred loan that would require payments, but the payment wouldn't start until year 31. So they would only be making 1 loan payment at a time. It just is a longer period of time.
Thank you.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Yeah, I have a question on the infrastructure cost. I think that's a big hurdle for this project. And I'm hoping that the city will help out and facilitate as much as we can to get this accomplished. Now, I understand it's 5 years from the time that we pass this that they have to start construction on the infrastructure part or the build part?
On the infrastructure has to be completed at or simultaneous with the start of construction of the first home, but it's a 5-year period that this has to start.
Okay. Now on the infrastructure part, and I know they're not going to be having the folks that are going to be building the homes working on this infrastructure part, and I'm hoping that that's going to be covered through hopefully prevailing wage to make sure that the folks that are doing that work are getting paid their due wages. I'm really supportive of this project. I lived on Loma Prieta. I grew up there, so that's my backyard, or was my backyard. My friend lived on that piece of property, so I knew the neighborhood kids up and down that airport road. So it's good to see this being built out. I also see you have a fellow carpenter sitting there next to you. He's hiding, but I know who he is, and I congratulate him for being there. It shows a lot of good vibes. So, anyways, on that note, I hope you get this accomplished, and I'd like to make a motion to
I'll second
approve.
Did
Felipe second.
the motion by Gonzalez, second by Hernandez, Dr. Bilicic?
So when you are getting ready to do this, do you know who's going to be in that unit? You know that before you start building? So they have input into, do they have any input into the building plan at all? No, you've already
That's always a
designed.
question.
Well-
What the idea, the perfect world is that we select the family before we begin construction, but we don't want them only working on their home. If we can, we'd like them to work on their neighbors' homes as well, so that they're getting to know people. They're working alongside with the volunteers. But we'd like to bring them on as early on into the construction as possible. Habitat has our own design criteria that we're basically trying to keep very modest homes and use materials that are going to last a long time and that are not going to be expensive to maintain. And we also kind of shy away from, you know, somebody saying, well, I sure like, you know, countertops to be marble here, or, you know, whatever. So, and especially because we're using a lot of materials that are high quality but are donated. So we offer them very little chance to really have input in custom designing their home. We kind of painted a manila folder color, and then they can come back later and do their own custom work afterwards.
I'm sure they'd be very happy to have a home. You know, that's the big thing. They'd be very happy to have a home. I wondered if you knew who was going in first, because you talk about they're helping to build it. So if you build it and you don't know who's there, then they're not helping build.
The only exception to that is if we're doing a home that is going to be ADA accessible, we want to get the family participating early on so that we can make any design changes that are needed to meet their particular needs.
I think it's great that you have ADA facilities available. The one thing I wanted to know about, now you said in Live Oak that the majority of the people there are from Watsonville. Is there any way that you can have Watsonville people be in the Watsonville places?
Well, I think that's, again, we'll have to work with the city staff and figure out what's the best way to make sure that our outreach is targeting families that live here in Watsonville now, or giving a point system that gives them additional a leg up in getting into the potential for being selected for those
Well,
units.
we're only talking 9 units, and I mean
7 to 9, and we're not
7
sure
to
yet.
9,
Yeah.
and I'm sure we have more than that many residents who would want to live in a home like this.
And Councilmember Bilicic, will just chime in quickly that's our interest as well. And as was stated earlier this evening, Watsonville has the greatest need. That need certainly is greater than 9 units.
Right.
And so we'll be working with Habitat as we move through the process to look at ways to do that.
I just didn't want to have people coming from elsewhere, whether it's in our county or other counties, and taking housing that's needed for our residents.
You know, I did want to say that Councilman Garcia brought up the need for rental housing, and definitely rental housing is needed too. Habitat specializes in home ownership, and that's also needed. One of the reasons that this project is a perfect fit for Habitat is that most of the rental housing projects rely on tax credit programs, and they need to build projects that are in the 60 to 100 unit size. That's kind of beyond what Habitat can do. We're a perfect fit for the smaller sites like this. So this was a perfect project for us, and something that we can really accomplish within a reasonable timeline.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Let's see, is there a comment on the motion?
I have a comment. Thank you all for the questions being answered here, and it isn't that I'm being really too intrusive on this, it's just I know the subject matter quite well. I know what kind of challenges there are for this. Before even Habitat for Humanity existed, that's pretty much how I got my place, which was the sweat equity in building something from the ground up myself for me to be able to get where I'm at now. Nothing else handed out with any other programs and whatnot. So I totally get this program. There's pride and ownership when you have that kind of participation. You have a neighborhood that you're building from the scratch, from the ground up, from the foundation up, and those neighbors will stick together for decades to come with those children. You know, the balls in the street there playing and whatnot, close to the schools, and it helps really build the community. So I compliment the efforts that Habitat for Humanity shows. And it isn't, you know, what are you going to give me? It's not a handout. And that's why I really like this particular business model, because you need to actually give yourself a hand to sure, you need the resources and the help, but you're doing it yourself so that you have that pride of ownership, and it isn't just a given. You have a lot more respect for what you've done with what you've earned, because you can see what you put into it yourself. So I really commend this project. And coming into town, I know we have very little space left in town in terms of the infill on the types of projects such as this. We're hoping maybe we can see something else, maybe the tiny homes kind of thing, as we get smaller and smaller spaces. I mean, I'm sure that there's probably some conversation out there with some sort of a possibility with this kind of project, with spaces getting smaller and smaller, for the future generations, for what land use we have in this county. So I do commend this and I do support it, and I just wanted to be very clear, because the report was not, there were some things in here that were not clear to me that came out this evening, and that's why I wanted to make sure I had some of this clarification as well. So thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Is there any more comments on the motion? Seeing none, let's thank the board members for being here, and Mr. Foster and bringing this opportunity to us. We'll have roll call, please.
Villasich,
Yes.
Upman Gomez,
Yes.
Garcia,
Yes.
Gonzalez,
Yes.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Hurst.
Yes, and so approved. And I say thank you again, and we look forward to a productive and cooperative, a good partnership. So thank the board members. This brings us to item 10 on our agenda. Any emergency items to add to the agenda? Seeing no emergencies, any, and I always hate to do this, any requests for scheduling future agenda items, because we already have about 60 items on the future agenda. Seeing no more.
I got what?
Oh, you do?
Well,
We'll go ahead and share it with us.
I got two.
Okay.
Actually.
Let's make sure staff is ready now. They got a long list.
Ready, staff? Actually, I'd like to bring up, to see if we can bring in a future agenda. For the future developments, that developers be required to stripe the existing streetways in front of the projects. And that also, I'd like to see if we can bring an ordinance to save some of our trees in the city of Wattsville. I mean, this might have been addressed a while time, but we lost a tree. It's unfortunate, but it does happen. Trees do get old. But we do need to make sure that the trees that are healthy and young don't just get chopped down also. And this will help Rebecca also on her Being Green Watsonville.
Thank you very much. The staff's got that down, right? Very good. Anything else for the good of the order? Seeing nothing else for the good of the order, let's adjourn this meeting and say thank you very much to the public. And gosh, I don't know what to do with the rest of my evening. Must be dancing somewhere, right, Pablo?